Hello everyone, viewers. Let's talk about power. Not the kind you see in parliaments or on thrones. I mean real power. The kind that operates in the shadows, that writes the history books before the battles are even fought. You've heard the name Illuminati, haven't you? Whispered in classrooms, shouted in movies. A convenient villain, a perfect distraction. But what if I told you the real story is so much bigger? That the Bavarian Illuminati were a footnote, a flash in the pan that burned out in a decade, intentionally or not, drawing all the attention while the true architects of Europe worked silently in the dark. The real masters of the game didn't need a famous name. They had something better: influence, ancient knowledge, and centuries to build their empires of shadow. Today, we're not just looking at 110 clandestine orders that molded nations, financed wars, and steered the destiny of a continent. Forget what you think you know. We're about to walk the hidden corridors of history, where the fate of Europe was decided not by kings, but by men in masks, in rooms lit only by candlelight. Our journey begins not with a whisper, but with a scream that echoed across all of Christendom. An unlucky day for some. A day of annihilation for the most powerful order in the world. At dawn, agents of King Philip, the Fair of France, moved with chilling precision. They unsealed secret orders and stormed every castle, preceptory, and farm owned by the Knights Templar. Knights who had been heroes of the crusades, who had dined with kings and held the Pope's ear, were dragged to charge heresy. Devil worship, unspeakable acts performed in secret rituals. But was that the real reason? Or had the Templars become too powerful, too wealthy, too knowledgeable for any king to tolerate? To understand their fall, you have to understand their terrifying rise. They began as a humble band of 9 knights, pledging to protect pilgrims on the dangerous roads to Jerusalem. They're a place of immense power and mystery. For years they were poor, obscure. Then something changed. Suddenly, they had the backing of the most influential churchman in Europe, Bernard of Clairvaux. Donations poured in, kings and nobles gifted them vast tracts of land. They grew into a fighting force of unparalleled skill, the special forces of the medieval world. But their true genius wasn't on the battle. A pilgrim in London could deposit his gold at a Templar preceptory and receive a coded piece of parchment. He could then travel to Jerusalem, present the note, and withdraw his funds. It was revolutionary. They became the bankers to popes and kings, the treasurers of Europe. They owned a fleet of ships, entire islands, and fortresses that dotted the landscape from Scotland to... They were a multinational corporation before the term existed. A state within every state, loyal only to the Pope. And perhaps loyal only to themselves. This was their power, and it was their doom. King Philip of France was deep in debt to the order. He saw a chance to wipe his slate clean and seize unimaginable wealth. The heresy charges were a smokescreen. They confessed to everything and anything fey spitting on the cross, worshipping a severed head named Baphomet, homosexuality. Under the agony of the rack, a man will say whatever his torturer wants to hear. Their Grand Master, Jacques de Molay, was burned at the stake in Paris. As the flames licked at his feet, it is said he issued a curse, summoning both King Philip and Pope Clement. The architects of his demise, to join him before God's judgment within a year, and within a year both men were dead. The order was officially dissolved, its wealth supposedly transferred to a rival order, the Hospitallers. But much of it, especially their legendary treasure, simply... Whispers began immediately that the Templars hadn't been destroyed. They had simply gone underground. That the survivors fled to Scotland, a nation at odds with the Pope, and aided Robert the Bruce at the Battle of Bannockburn. That they sailed their fleet to the New World a century before Columbus. That they became the foundation for another, even more secretive society, the Freemasons. The Templars showed the world how a secret society could amass global power, only to be torn down by the very kings who once feared them. Their story is a chilling lesson in the Game of Thrones. You either win or you are erased from history. Or are you? Perhaps their greatest secret was faking their own death. While the Templars controlled the world of finance and warfare, another, more ethereal group sought to control. In the early 17th century, a series of mysterious pamphlets appeared in Germany. They were titled the Fama Fraternitatis, the Confessio Fraternitatis, and the Chimical Wedding of Christian Rosenkreuz. They announced the existence of a secret brotherhood of alchemists and sages, the Rosicrucians, founded 200 years earlier by a legendary figure named Christian Rosenkreuz. This man, the pamphlets claimed, had traveled the Middle East, learned the secret wisdom of the ancients, and returned to Germany to form an order dedicated to a universal reformation of mankind. They possessed the philosopher's stone, the secret of immortality, and a knowledge that could heal the spiritual and intellectual sickness of Europe, a continent then being torn apart by religious war. The manifestos were an explosion in the intellectual world. They were brilliant, poetic, and utterly captivating. They promised a new dawn of enlightenment, a world guided by divine wisdom, not blind faith or political ambition. Scholars, philosophers, and mystics across the continent were desperate to join. They wrote public letters pleading for an invitation, but the Rosicrucians remained. No one could find them. They were an invisible college. Was it real? Was Christian Rosenkreuz a historical figure or an allegory? Was the entire thing a brilliant intellectual joke, a piece of utopian fiction designed to inspire debate? Or was it something more? The lack of evidence for their physical existence became the most powerful proof of their mastery. A truly secret society, people argued, would leave no. The Rosicrucian manifestos fueled a fire. They directly influenced the birth of speculative Freemasonry, providing it with a mystical philosophical backbone it previously lacked. They shaped the Enlightenment, planting the seeds of reason, scientific inquiry, and individual liberty. The dream of a universal reformation, guided by a secret elite, became a driving force in Western thought. Groups calling themselves Rosicrucians have appeared and disappeared for centuries, each claiming to be the heir to the original invisible order. They showed Europe a new kind of power, not the power of the sword or the coin, but the power of an idea, a story so compelling it could change the world without a single named member, a single known headquarters. It was a masterclass in psychological warfare they offered. The question still haunts historians: did a small group of unknown geniuses orchestrate one of the most successful intellectual movements in history from complete anonymity? Or did Europe simply invent the secret society it so desperately needed? Either way, the world was never the same. They ruled not by decree, but by planting a dream in the minds of millions. From the world of ideas, we move to the world of action. Today, you see their symbol, the square and compasses, on buildings in nearly every city. It's so common it's almost invisible, but this organization is arguably the most successful and influential secret society in history. Their origins are shrouded in legend. They trace their lineage back to the stonemason guilds that built the great cathedrals of Europe, and even further back to the builders of King Solomon's temple itself. Originally, they were operative masons, actual stoneworkers who possessed the secrets of geometry and engineering, secrets they guarded fiercely. But in the late 16th and early 17th centuries, something changed. Lodges began accepting non-operative members, men of influence, wealth, and intellect. These were the speculative masons, the tools of the stonemason. The lodge became a unique space inside its walls. Religious and political divisions were left at the door. A Catholic could sit with a Protestant, a nobleman with a merchant, in an age of brutal intolerance. This was radical. They were bound not by creed, but by a shared belief in a supreme being whom they called the great architect of the universe, and by a series of secret rituals, oaths. This is where their power grew. The lodge was a network. A man in London could travel to Paris, find a lodge, and instantly have a support system of trusted brothers. It was the ultimate old boys' club, spanning nations and social classes. And as the Enlightenment dawned, Masonic lodges became incubators for revolutionary ideas. The core tenets of Freemasonry: liberty, equality, fraternity, religious tolerance, and self-governance, were the very same ideals that fueled the American and French revolutions. Was it a coincidence? Look at the key figures: George Washington, Benjamin Franklin, Paul Revere. All were Freemasons. The Declaration of Independence is steeped in Masonic philosophy. In France, Voltaire, Montesquieu, and Lafayette were brothers of the craft. The Masonic motto, "Liberty, equality, fraternity," became the rallying cry of the French Revolution. The Masons weren't a monolithic organization with a single leader giving orders. They were a decentralized network of like-minded men who shared a radical vision for the future. They didn't conspire to start revolutions. They created the intellectual and social environment where revolutions became inevitable. They ruled by shaping the very men who would go on to lead nations. They built a new world, not with stone, but with ideas, implemented by a brotherhood of influential men who recognized each other with a secret grip and a quiet word. Their power wasn't in conspiracy. They created a parallel society with its own laws, its own morality, and its own vision for humanity, and slowly, methodically, they made that vision the reality for everyone else. They didn't overthrow the thrones of Europe. They simply built new republican chairs right next to them and convinced the world's most powerful men to take a seat. We've journeyed through the realms of finance, philosophy, and revolution. The story, if you are finding this journey into the hidden corridors of power as fascinating as I am, take a second to hit that like button and subscribe. It tells the algorithm that history's greatest secrets are worth sharing, and it ensures you won't miss our future explorations. Now, let's descend further. As the Age of Reason gave way to the Industrial Revolution, a counter-movement began, a hunger for magic, for mystery, for the spiritual. In the smog-filled streets of late 19th century London, a new order was born, one that sought to wield magic as a tool for personal and societal transformation. They called themselves the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. This was not a club for dabblers or parlor trick enthusiasts. This was a magical university, a structured organization dedicated to the study and practice of Western occult traditions, Kabbalah, alchemy, tarot, Enochian magic, and astrology. Its founders were Freemasons and Rosicrucians, who felt their own orders had lost their mystical heart. They created a hierarchical system of degrees where initiates would slowly and painstakingly learn the theory and practice of ritual magic. Nothing less than communion with the divine, the development of superhuman abilities, and the secret mastery of the universe. Their influence was staggering, not on politics directly, but on the cultural soul of the age. Its members were a who is who of the late Victorian and early 20th century artistic and literary world. William Butler Yeats, the Nobel Prize winning his poetry is filled with the order's symbolism. Bram Stoker, the creator of Dracula, was a member. Aleister Crowley, who would later become the most infamous occultist in the world, started his magical career in the Golden Dawn before breaking away to form his own, more notorious systems. The order taught that the universe was a web of unseen forces, and that a trained magician could learn to manipulate those forces through will. They were trying to create a new kind of human being, an enlightened adept who could navigate the hidden realities behind the mundane world. But like many powerful groups, it was destroyed by ego. A power struggle between founders, combined with the rebellious ambition of Aleister Crowley, fractured the order into splinter groups. It collapsed in on itself within a few decades, but its legacy was profound. The Golden Dawn is the foundation for nearly every modern Western occult movement, from Wicca to Thelema. It revived ancient magical systems and repackaged them for the modern world. They didn't seize control of governments, but they staged a coup on the Western imagination. They reintroduced magic and mysticism into a world obsessed with materialism, arguing that true power lay not in factories or armies. They sought to rule reality itself, and for a brief, shining moment, they convinced some of the world's greatest creative minds that it was possible. Their kingdom was not of this world, but its echoes can still be found in our books, our art, and our deepest spiritual longings. From the high magic of the Golden Dawn, we descend into the blackest pit of the 20th century. Here, the line between secret society. To understand the rise of Nazism, you must understand its occult roots. In the chaotic aftermath of Germany's defeat in World War I, Munich was a hotbed of political extremism and esoteric beliefs. It was here, in 1918 that a group of aristocrats, academics, and wealthy industrialists formed an organization named after Ultima Thule, a mythical northern land that the Thule Society was outwardly a literary and cultural club. They studied German antiquity, runes, and folklore, but beneath this academic veneer was a dark, racist ideology. They were obsessed with blood purity and the idea that the Aryan race was locked in a cosmic struggle against sinister, subhuman forces, particularly the Jews. Their master, Rudolf von Sebetendorf, was a practitioner of Sufi mysticism and alchemy, which he twisted into a doctrine of racial supremacy. They believed they could channel esoteric energies to create a new breed of Aryan Superman who would lead Germany to world domination. This might sound like fringe lunacy, but their members were anything but marginal. They included powerful figures who would become central to the Nazi Party. Alfred Rosenberg, the chief Nazi philosopher; Hans Frank, the future governor, general of Poland, known as the Butcher of Poland; and Dietrich Eckart, a poet and playwright who became Hitler's mentor. It was the Thule Society that first discovered a young, charismatic corporal named Adolf Hitler. They saw his raw oratorical talent and believed he could be the Messiah. Eckart took Hitler under his wing, introducing him to Munich's elite, coaching his public speaking and molding his crude anti-Semitism into a more pseudo-intellectual, occult-tinged worldview. The Thule Society also founded the German Workers' Party, the tiny political group that Hitler would transform into the Nazi Party. They even gave the party its most potent symbol, the swastika. For the Thule Society, the swastika was an ancient Aryan sun symbol representing cosmic order. They inverted it and turned it into the emblem of history's most destructive regime. The Thule Society itself faded into the background as the Nazi Party grew into a mass movement, but its poison had already entered the bloodstream of the nation. The core Nazi ideas, the Aryan master race, the Jewish world conspiracy, the quest for a lost homeland in the East, were all incubated in the mystical, paranoid meetings of this secret society. They show the terrifying potential of esoteric ideas when they are welded to political ambition and racial hatred. They didn't just influence a political party. They conjured it out of a cauldron of occultism, nationalism, and They are a stark reminder that the most dangerous secret societies are not the ones that seek to control the world from the shadows, but the ones that step out into the light, armed with a mythology so powerful it can convince a nation to embrace madness and march the world into war. Let's fast forward past the ashes of World War II into the modern era of spies, Cold War politics, and deep state. In the 1970s, Italy was a nation on a knife's edge, caught between American influence and the most powerful communist party in the West. It was a time of political assassinations, bombings, and constant government collapse, known as the Years of Lead. And at the heart of this chaos was a secret organization so powerful it became known as a state within a state. Its name was Propaganda Due, or P2. But under the leadership of a charismatic and sinister former fascist named Licio Gelli, it was transformed into something else entirely. Gelli envisioned a secret network that would unite Italy's elite politicians, military leaders, industrialists, bankers, and intelligence chiefs into a shadow government. His goal was to fight communism and steer Italy towards a more authoritarian, right-wing regime. The membership list of P2, discovered by police in 1981, read like a who is who of the Italian establishment. It included future Prime Minister Silvio Berlusconi, the heads of all three Italian intelligence agencies, 44 members of parliament, top bankers, and hundreds of senior military officers. This was not a fringe group. This was the deep state made manifest. P2, the 1980 Bologna railway station bombing, which killed 85 people, was carried out by neo-fascist terrorists who had connections to P2 members within the secret services. The goal was a strategy of tension to create so much chaos and fear that the public would demand a strongman to restore order. P2 was also deeply involved in the collapse of Banco Ambrosiano. The bank's chairman, Roberto Calvi, known as God's banker, was a P2 member. When the bank failed amidst allegations of massive fraud and laundering money for the mafia, Calvi fled. He was found a few days later hanging from Blackfriars Bridge in London, his pockets filled with stones and bricks, a symbolic Masonic execution. Licio Gelli's plan for Italy, called the Plan for Democratic Rebirth, was a blueprint for a quiet coup d'état. It called for taking control of the media, neutralizing trade unions, and rewriting the constitution. P2 was a modern Templar order, but instead of piety and chivalry, its creed was corruption, political manipulation, and violence. When the scandal broke, a parliamentary commission declared that P2 was a criminal organization and a conspiracy against the Republic. Gelli fled the country but was later extradited. P2 shows that the dream of a secret cabal ruling from the shadows is alive and well. They used the ancient structure of a Masonic lodge as a cover for a thoroughly modern criminal and political conspiracy. They proved that in the 20th century you don't need mystical rites or ancient bloodlines to seize power. All you need is a network of powerful, corrupt men, a secret oath, and the willingness to do whatever it takes to win from the high-tech conspiracy of P2. Let's journey back to a time of blood and steel, to the forests of 19th century Italy. Long before P2 tried to subvert the Italian, they were the Carbonari, the charcoal burners. In the early 1800s, Italy was not a unified country. It was a patchwork of kingdoms and duchies, many of them controlled by foreign powers like Austria, for Italian patriots. This was an unbearable humiliation, but open rebellion was impossible, so they went underground, inspired by the rituals and secrecy of Freemasonry, but with a much more radical revolutionary goal. They formed a network of secret societies. They called themselves the Carbonari, modeling their organization on the trade of charcoal burners, who worked deep in the forests, away from prying eyes. Their secret lodges were called barracks. Their members were cousins, and their meetings took place in the secluded. A new member would be led into a darkened room where he would be told the story of Christ's passion, reinterpreted as the story of a political martyr. He would swear a blood oath of loyalty, vowing to fight for the liberation of Italy from tyranny and to keep the society's secrets on pain of death. The Carbonari were not a single organization, but a vast decentralized web of cells. This made them incredibly difficult for the authorities. Their members were drawn from all walks of life: soldiers, nobles, students, and peasants, all united by a burning desire for a free and united Italy. For decades, they were the engine of revolution. They instigated countless uprisings, plots, and assassinations against the Austrian rulers and the Italian monarchs they controlled. Most of these revolts failed, often brutally suppressed. They created a culture of martyrdom and resistance that kept the dream of Italian unification alive. One of their most famous members was a young revolutionary named Giuseppe Mazzini, who would go on to become one of the founding fathers of modern Italy, while he eventually broke with the Carbonari, believing them to be too focused on ritual and not enough on a clear political program. He learned the art of clandestine organization. They were often disorganized and their plots were sometimes foolhardy, but their relentless pressure on the established order created the conditions for change. They ruled the Italian underworld, a shadow kingdom of patriots who passed messages in secret codes and plotted rebellion by moonlight. They are a powerful example of how a secret society can become the heart and soul of a national liberation movement, proving that sometimes Now we come to perhaps the most controversial and enigmatic society on our list, a group whose very existence blurs the line between history and myth, between secret order and elaborate hoax. The Priory of Sion, the story exploded into public consciousness with the 1982 book, The Holy Blood and the Holy Grail. And later, Dan Brown's The Da Vinci. The claim is spectacular, that the Priory of Sion is an ancient secret society founded in Jerusalem in 1099, dedicated to protecting a secret of world-shattering importance. The secret that Jesus Christ did not die on the cross, but married Mary Magdalene, had children, and that their bloodline, the Merovingian dynasty of French kings, survives to this. According to this narrative, the Priory has been working for centuries behind the scenes to protect this royal bloodline and eventually restore it to power. creating a new Holy European Empire. The list of the Priory's alleged Grand Masters is a breathtaking roll call of Western genius: Leonardo da Vinci, Isaac Newton, Victor Hugo, Claude Debussy. They were all. The evidence for this extraordinary claim comes from a series of documents discovered in the National Library of France in the mid-20th century, known as the Dossier's Secrets. These documents lay out the history of the Priory and its connection to the Merovingian bloodline. For believers, this is the key to unlocking the true history of Christianity and Western civilization. It's a narrative of a hidden truth suppressed for millennia. Nearly all historians who have investigated the matter have concluded that the Priory of Sion is a 20th century invention, an elaborate and brilliant hoax perpetrated by a French royalist eccentric named Pierre Plantard. The ancient documents in the French National Library. They were forged and planted there by Plantard and his associates in the 1960s. Plantard, it seems, wanted to create a fictional historical pedigree for his own claims to the French throne. So which is it? An ancient order protecting the greatest secret in history, or the most successful historical hoax of all time? This is what makes the Priory so fascinating. Even if it is a hoax, it's a hoax that has had a profound cultural impact. It tapped into a deep-seated desire for a history that is. It created its own reality, inspiring a whole genre of books and films and convincing millions that there is a secret at the heart of our civilization. The Priory of Sion represents a unique kind of rule. It rules our imagination. It forces us to ask, what if history is a lie? What if the greatest stories are the ones that have never been told? Whether it was a real secret society or not is almost. It demonstrated that in the modern world you can create a legend from scratch and watch it take on a life of its own. It's a secret society for the information age, where the line between fact and fiction is constantly blurring, and the most powerful truth is often the best story. From a story that might be a lie, we turn to a power that was terrifyingly real, a form of justice delivered from the shadows by Welcome to medieval Germany and the secret courts of the Holy Vemum, the Vemegric. In the late Middle Ages, the Holy Roman Empire was a fractured and often lawless place. The authority of the emperor was weak, and local feudal lords were often corrupt or unable to enforce the law. In this vacuum of power, a shadow justice system arose, particularly in the region of Westphalia. The Vemgeric claimed to derive their authority directly from the emperor himself. They were secret tribunals composed of initiated members, the Freischversen, or free judges. They operated outside the established legal system, holding their courts in secret, often at night, in remote locations like under a linden tree or in a cave. Their jurisdiction was absolute. They could try any free man for the most serious crimes: murder, treason, heresy, theft. The proceedings were shrouded in ritual and secrecy. A summons from the Vem was a terrifying thing. A secret symbol, a knife, would be pinned to the accused person's door. To ignore the summons was to confess guilt. If the accused appeared, they faced a tribunal of hooded judges. Evidence was presented, but the procedures were mysterious. If the accused was found guilty and was present, the sentence was carried out immediately. He was hanged from the nearest tree. If the accused had failed to appear, he was condemned in absentia. He was declared an outlaw. His life and property were forfeit. Any initiated member of the Vem who encountered him was not only allowed but obligated to kill him on sight. To prove the sentence had been carried out by leaving the symbolic knife with the body. The Vem represented a terrifying and brutally efficient form of vigilante justice. For some, they were a force for order in a chaotic world. The only thing standing between honest folk and total. For others, they were a sinister conspiracy, a secret police force that used fear and assassination to amass power and settle personal scores. Their power peaked in the 15th century when their membership swelled to thousands, including princes and bishops. Their influence spread across Germany. No one was safe from their judgment. You could be talking to a friend, a neighbor, a merchant, and never know that they were a free judge. The Vem's power eventually waned as the central state grew stronger and established its own monopoly on justice. but their legend endured. They became a symbol of a hidden parallel authority, a secret government that enforced its own laws with rope and steel. They are a chilling reminder that when official systems of power break down, other darker systems will always rise to take their place. They ruled not a kingdom of land, but a kingdom of fear, where any citizen could be a judge and any tree could become a gallows. We come now to our final society and back to where we started, with the most famous name in the conspiracy playbook, the Illuminati, but not the myth. The reality, the real Bavarian Illuminati were founded on May 1st, 1776, by a professor of canon law. He despised the power of the monarchy and the Catholic Church, which he saw as forces of superstition and oppression. He dreamed of a world guided by reason, science, and liberty. He wanted to create a secret society that would attract the best and brightest minds in Europe, infiltrate the levers of power, and guide humanity towards a new age of enlightenment, a novus ordo seclorum. He modeled his organization on a mix of Freemasonry and the Jesuit order he so detested, creating a strict hierarchy of degrees. New members, called novices, were carefully monitored. They knew nothing of the order's true aims. Only as they advanced through the ranks did they learn the final radical secret, that the Illuminati sought the abolition of all monarchies and established religions. The end of Weishaupt's strategy was one of stealth. He instructed his members to join Masonic lodges, which were already filled with influential men, and to take them over from within. For a few years they were incredibly successful. They recruited hundreds of members across Germany, including prominent figures like Duke Ferdinand of Brunswick and the writer Johann Wolfgang von Goethe. They were on the verge of becoming a major force in European intellectual. Weishaupt's paranoid, controlling nature created internal conflicts, and their radical anti-state, anti-church agenda was simply too much for the authorities to ignore. In 1785, the ruler of Bavaria, Karl Theodor, banned all secret societies. The government cracked down hard. They seized the order's internal documents and published them for all to see, exposing their Bavarian Illuminati were effectively destroyed. They existed for less than a decade, so why are they so famous? Because of the propaganda that followed. Conservative writers like John Robison and Augustin Barruel, terrified by the French Revolution, seized upon the published Illuminati papers. They claimed the Illuminati had not been destroyed, but had simply gone deeper underground. They argued that the Illuminati had orchestrated the French Revolution and were the secret puppet masters behind a global conspiracy to destroy civilization. This is the birth of the modern Illuminati myth, the idea of a single, all-powerful secret society controlling world events from the shadows. The historical Illuminati were not this. They were a small group of idealistic and arguably, but their legend became infinitely more powerful than their reality. They became the ultimate bogeyman, a blank screen onto which people could project all their fears about a hidden controlling elite. The story of the real Illuminati is a lesson in how history is made. Their actual rule was non-existent. Their rule over our fears and our imagination, however, has been absolute for over 200 years. They are the final, from the Templar bankers to the Rosicrucian dreamers, from the Masonic revolutionaries to the Nazi occultists, the Vemic judges and the P2 puppet masters. We see a hidden current running through European history, a constant struggle for power waged not on the battlefield, but in the secret lodge, the hidden archive, and the human mind. These 10 societies, real, imagined, or somewhere in between, beneath it lies a world of shadow, intrigue, and secrets, a world where small groups of dedicated and often ruthless individuals have tried to steer the destiny of us all. The thrones of Europe may have been occupied by kings and queens, but it was often these secret rulers who were truly in control. All right, that is all for today's video. If you enjoyed this journey into the shadows of history, please subscribe and give